Because it is empty then, the tomb of Christ marks the beginning of new life and the healing of our minds and hearts. This is what we saw take place in the life of Peter. Peter went to the tomb full of sadness, regret, and shame at having betrayed and lost the one whom he loved most dearly. But once he arrived, Peter found new reason to trust that God was still at work in his beloved Son, and thus a new hope that his betrayal would not have the last word. And it did not. What we witnessed this morning is the answer to Jesus' prayer. For what we see is Peter turning back to Jesus to follow him once again. The prayer of Jesus is not only answered at the tomb, however. Our first reading from the Acts of the Apostles reveals to us that the empty tomb was indeed a new beginning to Peter's life, a life spent on strengthening the faith of others, just as Jesus had prayed. For therein, we hear him proclaim the good news of salvation in Jesus Christ, telling us that though put to death on a tree, God raised him on the third day. And Peter continues, everyone who believes in him will receive forgiveness of sins through his name. Peter would spend the rest of his life preaching this gospel. And to be sure, each time he did, his memory carried him back to the empty tomb, just as we saw his feet carry him this morning, though full of sadness and suffering. This morning, we are called to do as Peter did, to take all our sins and sufferings and run to the empty tomb of Jesus. Once there, we will learn, as Peter and John did, that the darkness of sin is no match for the grace of the risen Christ. That indeed the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.